I'm here with Senator Richard Blumenthal. Thank you so much for taking time out of your hectic schedule to come to the Sentinel office.
Well, thank you, Taylor.
Absolutely. So we'll get into it. You've been involved with politics for quite some time. Can you give me a brief overview of all that?
I first ran for office in 1984 as a state representative in Stanford. Then I was a state senator and attorney general for 20 years before becoming a United States senator about 5.5 years ago. But I had been the U.S. attorney for Connecticut. I worked in the White House under Pat Moynihan when he was an assistant to President Nixon. And I also was a law clerk to Justice Harry Blackmun on the United States Supreme Court. So I had a number of appointed positions before I ran for elective office.
Great. And which one of those experiences do you think really prepared you for your role right now?
That is a great question. I have a theory, which is that people learn most from great mentors, people they want to emulate in life. And I had some terrific mentors. Harry Blackmun, as a Supreme Court justice, really infused me with a love of precision and articulateness in legal expression. Pat Moynihan was a consummate speaker and thinker, very original, but also very loyal and dedicated. And I also had the opportunity to work briefly for Abe Ribicoff, the senator from Connecticut, who gave me some insights about elective politics. So the combination of those three individuals, as much as the experiences, really taught me a tremendous amount. And then as Attorney General for the state of Connecticut, I really put to work my instincts and intellectual qualities, such as they are, in fighting for the people of Connecticut, using that job to be an advocate, to go to bat for people who needed a voice and needed someone to fight for them and work for them.
And why is it important to have someone like that? Or people?
People as individuals often lack the confidence in themselves and the knowledge about their legal rights to put them to good use. And their legal rights may be more expansive than they realize. When people say there ought to be a law, in fact, there often is a law. And sometimes it is unenforced for the benefit of the public. So in consumer protection, for example, in fighting the tobacco industry, in fact, suing the tobacco industry and leading nationally attorneys general to sue the tobacco industry so that we could recover not only money but also change the way they marketed to children. I was using established law. We didn't make a new law. We enforced consumer protection laws that require honest and truthful labeling of products and statements to the public. So when the tobacco company said, we don't market a product to children, we don't have a product that kills people or injures them, they were basically lying. We sued them for it, and we settled a case for billions of dollars, but also to change their marketing practices, to educate the public, and to use it as a forum to create more awareness about the dangers of smoking and the costs, not only of families who suffered loved ones who were lost to cancer, but also the costs of health care. Because we all pay for cancer, lung disease, heart problems that are caused by smoking through our insurance. So the effort, just one of a number that I undertook as Attorney General, to enforce the law, make it real, I think was a very sort of illuminating experience for me and led me to much of what I do now in fighting for people and trying to use the law as well as change the law for the better.
And speaking of tobacco, CVS just embarked on a mission to spend $50 million?
Yes.
And what is that all about? You had a part in that.
This effort by CVS is very, very encouraging. They are taking a stand and stepping up to recognize that there are pharmaceutical drugs, medicines, medications that can help people quit. The more we know about tobacco addiction, it's really nicotine addiction, which is one of the most powerful addictive drugs known to man, the more we realize that it's a combination of counseling and often medication, the patch and other devices that can help people break this addiction. And often that addiction will begin at childhood when people are unaware of the consequences and of the powerfully addictive qualities of nicotine. So what CVS is doing by making available these drugs, by refusing to sell tobacco products, is, in my view, very courageous and visionary. They are doing really what is best about our private enterprise, which is not only increasing their bottom line, but also doing well by their customers. And I'm not doing an ad for CVS, but my hope is that others will emulate what they are doing. And I should just say I've done a lot of work also on another form of addiction, opioid and heroin addiction, where Walgreens is undertaking to sell a very important drug that often can save people, Narcan, naloxone. They are helping in that area of public health. So I want to balance what I say about CVS with Walgreens, and what they represent is really doing good as well as doing well. And that's what a lot of people in the Greenwich community who are successful in business do as well. They have a very strong sense of giving back, social and personal responsibility, as well as business success.
Greenwich is also doing a study on heroin use and who's doing it, why they start doing it. Why is that important to do it in this community?
It's important in every community. When I began in law enforcement as the U.S. Attorney for Connecticut, I was the chief federal prosecutor. Crack, cocaine, heroin were found primarily in the inner cities in terms of use and addiction. The incidence of heroin now is all over Connecticut in communities like Greenwich and Farmington and West Hartford, relatively affluent, rural communities, Litchfield, and very urban communities still, like the downtowns of Bridgeport and Hartford. It is an epidemic sweeping this country, causing 16,000 deaths a year in 2013. It's grown dramatically since. We don't have the most recent numbers. 125 people a day, and 735 people dying from overdoses in last year in Connecticut alone. So what we face is a public health hurricane and a lot of denial about it, especially in communities like Greenwich. Oh, it's not happening here. That's Bridgeport's problem. That denial and the stigma that is attached to addiction are a very horrendous hurdle that has to be overcome. And so I have spearheaded, literally this week, passed yesterday in the United States Senate by an overwhelming majority, bipartisan, a measure called the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, which provides more treatment, support for law enforcement. We need to support our police and prosecutors, but we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. There has to be more treatment, and particularly inpatient treatment, and more of the medication, Suboxone, for example, that can help people break this addiction, very powerful. And it often begins, and this is why it's so especially important in this community, with a young person breaking an arm or an ankle, having surgery or wisdom teeth removed, and receiving Vicodin, Percocet, OxyContin, powerful opioid painkillers that can lead to addiction. The most common risk factor for heroin addiction is the use of opioid prescription painkillers. And so when a doc says to a young person, I know you're going to be in a lot of pain after this surgery, after we put your broken arm in a cast or whatever it is, and here's a prescription for 30 pills. That's a lot of painkillers when 3 may be enough. In fact, 3 may be unnecessary. So those extra pills either create addiction, or they are on the streets sold, or they are kept in a medicine cabinet where they're a catastrophe waiting to happen. So some of what the bill does is provide for more education and training, access to the state registry that can monitor who is prescribing what. This issue is one of the most pressing of our time, and I have held roundtables all around the state of Connecticut, literally in every community, every kind of community, and we've had law enforcement officials, treatment providers, docs, educators, and recovering addicts, and their parents. And what is so gripping to me is the stories of those recovering addicts and their families about how their lives have been shattered. And that's true in Greenwich. All you need to do is have someone talk candidly about their friends or neighbors, their colleagues at work. We've all been touched in one way or another by this problem of opioid addiction. It is an epidemic. I know that's an overused word, but it is like a public health hurricane, as much a natural disaster as tornadoes or floods would be in terms of its impact. And the largest cause of death, injury-related death in this country, is no longer car crashes, it's heroin addiction and overdose.
And you said almost everyone's been touched by this issue. Why do you think it took until now for this bill to get passed and people to get talking about it, even Greenwich doing a study about it?
There's a tipping point, I think, when, in terms of social consciousness, enough people become aware of a problem that politically it's okay to discuss. And I've been talking about this issue for quite a while in championing this bill in the Judiciary Committee. I am on the Judiciary Committee. It began as a law enforcement bill, but criminal justice reform is insufficient as a solution to this problem. In fact, there is no one panacea. It has to be multifaceted: law enforcement, treatment, Narcan, naloxone, which brings people back from the brink of death when they overdose, and removing the stigma. Addiction is an illness. It's a form of disease that can be conquered, but it has to be treated without the stigma and shame that prevents people from coming forward and seeking that treatment. And we've done, as a matter of fact, the roundtables with some of the recovering addicts who are very brave and very smart and very articulate, and simply began down this road, potentially ruining their lives, and they are working their way back.
That's great. And now, besides tobacco and opioid abuse, what other issues are you feeling strongly about right now?
Well, that's a very good question as well. What I think is so important right now is that we continue investing in jobs and economic growth, which has been my priority from day one in the United States Senate. Jobs and economic growth. We need to invest in rails, roads, bridges, which creates jobs. Metro North and Amtrak are vital to moving people to their jobs and creating an environment economically here in the state of Connecticut that will attract more job-creating businesses. Better roads. Our roads are decaying. And bridges. We know what happened literally almost a stone's throw from here at the Myannis River Bridge. That could happen again. The Norwalk Walk Bridge that is stuck and prevents train travel, that bridge was built at the end of the 1900s when Grover Cleveland was president. And it dates from a time when those bridges were built in different ways, and it stuck often in the summer, and it ties up rail traffic up and down the East Coast. So we need to invest, create more jobs. I'm on the transportation science, the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. Transportation is a big part of what I do, but investment in jobs. And another way to invest is college affordability. We need to reduce the amount of college debt in this country. $1.2 trillion. That's an overhang and a drag our entire economy, because young people coming out of college with $60,000 or $100,000 in debt can't buy new homes, can't begin families or start businesses. Their futures are narrowed, and that means our future as a nation is constricted. So we have a plan. I've helped to lead it, a bill that has been introduced that will provide for more grants like Pell Grants, scholarships, financial aid that will enable people to avoid debt. For those who have that debt, often paying 7 or 8% interest rate, this measure would help them refinance. Right now, unlike a car loan or a mortgage, people often cannot go to refinance their debt at lower interest rates. You can do it with a car, you can do it with a home, usually not with a college debt
Not with your
involving the federal
education.
government. And then people who need debt or loans now, lower interest rates. But my sort of mission in this college affordability business is not only to enable people to go to school without debt, it's also, number one, lower the costs of college tuition. And number two, enable people who have debt now to work it off through public service. Why shouldn't someone who is a policeman or a firefighter in Greenwich, or a teacher in our local school system, or working at the YMCA or the YW, be able to receive credit financially for the great work that they do? And so I would, in effect, reward public service, much as we have the GI Bill, which rewards service in the military. I have two sons who have served in the military, and I know a lot of people who've used the GI Bill, and my sons may not have done it because they went into the military after going to college, but it's a great way for young people to finance their college education or their graduate education, and that ought to be true of people who have debt and do public service in the civilian area afterward.
And what do you think needs to happen for that type of thing to happen?
We need a bill to be passed.
Right.
I proposed it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope there'll be a bipartisan majority for it, as there was for the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act. I've worked very hard on that bill to make it bipartisan, as we did on certain veterans issues. I am the ranking member on the Veterans Affairs Committee, so I've been very much involved in veterans health care, providing job opportunities, tax credits to businesses that hire more veterans. I've championed more skill training for our veterans, because there are jobs for a lot of people, but not enough people with the right skills. And that's what I hear from businesses as I go around the state. We have jobs, we can't find people with the right skills. We need to train our veterans to do it. So we championed a bill, bipartisan bill, that provides more opportunities and reforms health care through greater choice on the part of those veterans. That kind of bipartisanship reaching across the aisle is critical to college affordability, just as it was to the transportation bill that we passed, the elementary and secondary education bill that we passed. It is possible to get things done in Washington, believe it or not, if you focus on the mission and you make it bipartisan.
And what national issues should people in Greenwich be concerned with?
I think the world is a very dangerous place, so I hope people will understand what's happening with ISIS and ISIL. We're at war with them, with it. We need to be mindful about the importance of a strong national defense. I'm on the Armed Services Committee, and I spend a lot of time thinking about the Joint Strike Fighter, submarine force, undersea warfare capability, about helicopters, and about how we attract the best and the brightest of this generation to serve, because we can talk and talk and talk about our military hardware, but at the end of the day, it's the excellence of our people serving in the military. They are our greatest asset that gives us a strong national defense. So I hope that people in Greenwich will think about the importance of public service, and particularly our veterans service in the military, the importance of a strong national defense, investment in jobs and economic growth, transportation, college affordability, and the need to also, and I'll make this kind of a last point, to reform our immigration system, which is broken and seriously needs reform. I worked very, very hard on an immigration reform bill in the last session of Congress that was approved overwhelmingly by a bipartisan majority and would enable us to correct this broken system. And unfortunately, it never received a vote in the House of Representatives. Passed the Senate, never got a vote in the House. I want to bring back that bill so we can improve our immigration system, enable people who are now working and living peacefully and obeying all the rules to come out of the shadows and have a path to earned, I stress earned, citizenship. More H-1B visas, reform the abuses in that system. This bill attracted a coalition of business, labor, Republican, Democrat. That's the kind of measure that I hope we can do.
And in the presidential race right now, speaking of immigration, there's been some racially charged things said. What do you have to say about that?
I really find it reprehensible. But talk about excluding a religious group from entering this country. Not only sends the wrong message to people who live here, but also to peoples and nations abroad. Some of them are our allies. A lot of them are engaged in the fight against extremism and violent terrorism abroad. We should be shoulder to shoulder with them, not excoriating an entire racial or religious group. And so I am really saddened by it and hope that the public dialogue can be raised to a higher level. And I'm saddened also, as someone who's been involved in the political world for a while, by the incivility of our public discourse. I have friends and family who are Republicans. We ought to be able to work together, and that's what I try to do literally every day in the United States Senate. Some of my great friends are across the aisle, and we can joke, whether it's in the Senate gym at 5:30 in the morning or on the floor of the Senate or at lunch or dinner, about what we have in common and where we disagree. And we ought to be able to get along and maximize where we agree to get things done.
And what do you hope to see in the future?
I hope to see, number one, a confirmation of a Supreme Court justice in the immediate future. The president will nominate someone. I hope the Judiciary Committee will give that person a hearing. I'm on the Judiciary Committee. And I hope that we'll confirm a Supreme Court justice because the country deserves it. It's our job. The public rightly wants us to do our job. I'm going to be one of the toughest questioners and scrutinize very closely whoever the president appoints. I have no idea as we sit here who it will be. That person deserves to be scrutinized before they're appointed for a lifetime on the United States Supreme Court. But let's approach the person on the merits, not just reject that person sight unseen. And that's what it means to advise and consent. That's our constitutional duty. We ought to do our job, and I hope the president shortly will propose someone.
And in doing your job, can you tell me about an average day down in Washington?
An average day is running from one hearing or meeting or group to another, always having to be in 2 or 3 places at the same time, because I'm on 4 committees, and they're all likely meeting and having hearings at the same time. So Armed Services will have a hearing on our defense in the South Pacific or wherever, on our undersea warfare capability, and that's of great interest to me because we produce submarines and electrical. I want to go to that hearing. And Judiciary Committee will be having a hearing on our criminal justice system. And Veterans Affairs will be having a hearing on the effort to reform healthcare. And the Commerce, Science, and Technology Committee will be having a hearing on railroads. Not all exactly at the same time, but a lot of them meet together. So I'm running from one to another, or meeting with constituents who are coming down to Connecticut, or colleagues that have a common interest, as I do, in college affordability. How are we going to craft this bill? And so a lot at the same time. It's a whirl of motion.
It sounds very difficult. How do you deal with it all?
You know, I like being active, and I like asking questions. I like to do cross-examination when I was a lawyer, a prosecutor. So I like the hearings, and the great part of this job is I get to help people. So the best part of the day is reaching out to an agency or an insurance company or someone else that is not doing right by somebody from Connecticut, and going to bat for that person and saying to the head of the insurance company, you know, you really shouldn't be denying coverage for this medical procedure, or saying to the VA, you know, you shouldn't be denying a disability claim from this veteran, or the Social Security bureaucracy. You shouldn't be denying the benefits that this person is entitled to. And we go to bat for people, whether it's in a private company or a big government bureaucracy. We go to bat for people and fight for them. That's the common element of what I did as Attorney General and what I do now, and that's really the best part of my day.
And you're not afraid to do that.
I've been doing it for a while, and I'm not afraid to do it.
Great. And now we'll switch to an average day when you get to be back in Connecticut. What do you enjoy doing?
Well, I love being back in Connecticut. I'd rather be in Connecticut than down in D.C. I will start in Greenwich, where I live, and after I work out, I will go to Bridgeport for a meeting there. For example, today to celebrate the passage of the FAST Act, actually in North Haven, with 250 contractors, unions, businesses that will receive money to do more construction. And then to Hartford for a celebration of the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act. We went to a farm that makes maple syrup, because a lot of the food distributors or manufacturers are using the term maple when they have no maple syrup. Misleading and deceptive advertising. So we went there, I went there to learn more about how they make maple syrup and how the mislabeling affects this maple syrup producer. It doesn't sound like a big issue, but if you buy certain cereals or certain ice cream or certain cookies, and it has the word label, or the label maple, you should look at the ingredients to make sure that it actually is made with maple syrup. That's just a small consumer protection example, because we also, just in the past couple of days, did a call, and in that instance we called on the FDA to crack down on this practice. So every one of these issues has an action component, and we've called on the airlines, for example, to end the add-on fees for baggage, for pillows, for seat changes, for reservation changes, provide more legroom. And I've called on the Department of Transportation and the FAA to take action, and went to Bradley Airport to talk to some of the officials there, consumer protection and consumer union officials, about what is needed. So the average day involves seeing people, meeting people, going around the state. There are very few days when I'm back here that I don't go up and down the coast, as far as New London or to Hartford or to Litchfield County, and many days it's all of the above.
And what is your favorite part about being back in Greenwich?
My family, my wife and family, if my children, our children are around. I love Greenwich as a community. It has such diversity in people, smart people, and very socially aware and generous people. And I think my favorite part of Greenwich is the people, beginning with my family, and then friends that we have, really good friends here, people who are immensely loyal and caring.
Great. And how can people contact you if they are having a problem?
Well, we have a website. Hopefully you'll put it up. I'm endlessly giving out my cell phone number, but people can contact me personally at our website. And my personal email is richard@blumenthal.senate.gov, G-O-V. So there are a lot of ways to get hold of me, by phone or by email. And I encourage people, by the way, to contact me. You are doing me a favor if you contact me. You are enabling me to do my job. You are giving me the opportunity to do what I love most, which is working for people and fighting for them, especially if they feel they have nowhere else to turn. They're up against some big corporation or government bureaucracy or some powerful interest, and people say, I just can't seem to get any justice here. That's when I love to go to work for people.
Thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I really appreciate it.
I'm delighted and honored to be with you. Thank you, Taylor.
Again, Senator Richard Blumenthal, and for the Greenwich Sentinel, I'm Taylor Knight.